Big 10 Plus 4 is a member of Odd Pods Media and ASAP All Sports All Plays Network.
Hello and welcome into another edition of Big 10 Plus 4 College Sports with a Midwest Perspective, Blue Collar and Blue Blood. I'm Dalton Shetler. That's Tony Hollinsworth just over there on the other side. Sam Sprunger will be with us in just a handful of minutes, and we'll get his takes on the Big 10 Championship game. I feel like there's all kinds of conversations we can have in the show. We're going to be having in the show, Tony, but maybe we save the one that involves the Purdue's only appearance in a Big Ten title game, maybe for decades, until Sam returns. So we'll put that in our pocket. That feels fair. Let's start with the college football playoff instead, because just about the unthinkable has happened, where with the 4-team format, the Big Ten found a way to get 2 teams in and now has 50% of that field, with Michigan at number 2 and Ohio State at number 4. The rest of the field, Georgia 1, TCU 3. But there's a couple of different angles to poke and prod at this, but the fact that the Big Ten's got 2 teams in, what do you think of that, Tony?
Yeah, it says a lot. I mean, if I'm remembering correctly, this is the first time that has ever happened.
Yes.
Because, I mean, for the most part, you've either had 2 SEC teams, or you've had the SEC champion, you've had the ACC champion, the Big Ten champion, and then whoever else wants to hop in. But it hasn't been a second Big Ten team. So this says a lot. And you know, I saw a lot of Alabama fans very upset. Of course, I saw Nick Saban that he advocated during the Big Ten Championship halftime show about how his team deserved to be in, about how
he was everywhere. I can't believe he didn't intercept one of these podcast episodes for Big 10 Plus 4 and jump in and go on the campaign trail with us.
It's because of me. It's because I'm like, no, Nick, I'm not accepting your 2 quality losses. Congratulations, you sucked the best. Congratulations. That does not mean you deserve a playoff spot.
It's so funny to get Tony going on Alabama. It's so funny.
Look, I get it. You know, the whole entire pitch is, well, if you want to look at who did they lose to, they lost to 2 of the teams, have both been ranked top 10 at some point, top 5 even at some point. They lost to both of them by a combined total of 4 points. One at the very end of the game with Tennessee with a game-winning field goal, and then LSU with a game-ending 2-point conversion. Yep. So I get it in the matter of, we're
a ball bounce away.
Yeah, and I get it. I can 100% see why they make that argument, but I also look at it as this is the college football playoffs, and they want the 4 best teams. Alabama has not been a good team this year. Like they just haven't. Like, you look at their schedule, they beat Ole Miss, who at the time was still ranked in like the top 15. They're now unranked. Their best win is against number 20 Texas, which that whole entire game was controversial.
And Texas had its backup quarterback for most of that game.
Yes, backup quarterback. You know, there was potentially missed calls. Was Bryce Young shin down or not when, he was when he was hit, still managed to get the ball off. So, I mean, and they've been one of the most undisciplined teams so far this year. So that's really my biggest knock is if this was the traditional Alabama team that had like dominated the opponents that they're supposed to dominate, and they've just lost a couple close games, 100% agree with you. This is an Alabama team like we haven't seen in a very long time. They were not a defensive force that I was like, oh man, that Alabama defense once again. Or even on the other side of the ball, the last few years, it's been an Alabama offense. Like, none of them, if I remember the actual name and stat correctly, none of them were selected for an SEC all offense or all defense player so far for this year. Like, nobody played that well that they were like, man, this is one of the best players in the SEC at this position, except for maybe like the offensive line, maybe. So it's like that to me is my biggest thing. while could Alabama maybe beat up on TCU? Yeah, probably, just because of experience and I would say overall better talent against the other three. No.
Well, and here's where I think you are correct. I think Alabama deserved to not be in. I think TCU and Ohio State comparatively, it's hard to say Ohio State necessarily deserves to be in, but that resume stacks up better than Alabama's because you have a good win on there, and Alabama just doesn't. Bama just doesn't have good wins on this resume, which is really unique and a little bit bizarre. But this is where maybe it's because I've had the tinfoil hat on a little too long, but I applaud the committee for making the right move. Because I thought for sure when I saw TCU drop to Kansas State, I was like, the stars are aligning. The TCU is going to get knocked out so we can have Georgia, Bama, Ohio State, and Michigan. If you really want to build this up for TV ratings, you could have a rematch of the game with Ohio State, Michigan. You could have a rematch of last year's national title of Alabama, Georgia, or you could hope that they meet each other in the championship game by getting through their semifinal games. But I thought for sure, because that's really what this seems to be, right? It seems to be a made-for-TV extravaganza at the end of the season. Like, much to your point, when we were picking these teams, I hate, because I found that the word best is so subjective throughout this playoff thing, because to me, it should be about the teams that deserve and earn their way into the playoff. The committee over time has a lot of times went with, well, we like this team's talent. And if that's the case, we don't really even need to play these games. We could have just put Bama in before the season because, hey, it's Alabama. That's all we know. Nick Saban just has a bunch of 5 stars, and they go play for a national championship every single year. Texas A&M could have just been put in there because all the 5 stars they have, and then we see how it plays out. Like, I hate the on-paper talent argument. I think that's why we spent the last 3.5 months arguing and focusing hyper intensely on what's happening in college football, was so we knew who the best teams were, who had earned their way. So I think the committee actually did the right thing here by really going more with the earn style. I mean, you can make the argument TCU's not as great of a team as where they're at right now. I mean, TCU's a ball bounce away from how many games at the end of the season losing? I mean, they send a kicker out there in fire drill style, able to hit a game winner in the closing weeks. Like they were in so many one possession games. They most certainly did not dominate, but they won, and I felt like they earned their way. I really just didn't have the faith in the committee that they were going to make that move. But I think this was the right play.
Yeah, I didn't think they were. Same thing. When we saw USC lose, I was like, okay.
There's Ohio State.
There's Ohio State. And then there's a lot of theories that, okay, well, if TCU loses, then that leaves for Alabama. And I'm like, but really why? I mean, why would, and I think the college football playoff committee kind of recognized that they would have a little bit more of that, quote unquote, Bama bias, because how could you ever justify that a 12-win, 1-loss Big 12 team doesn't deserve to be in the playoffs more than a 10-2 quote unquote SEC favorite in Alabama? And just looking at their schedule, that's been my biggest thing I've preached, this whole entire time, is what is their quality wins. They got a win against, at the time, number 20 Arkansas. But again, this was an Arkansas team that was ranked extremely high at the beginning of the season, lost a couple games and started to fall very quickly. Then they faced number 24 Mississippi State, which, again, not exactly super high. So it's not like that's super impressive. And then at the time they beat number 11 Ole Miss, who is now unranked. And then to end the year, they only put 34 on Austin Peay. And I've said this time and time again, Austin Peay is a school that they drop 34 on in like the first quarter, like the first half. And then you put your backups in, and then you maybe score another couple touchdowns, and it's like 48, 56 to nothing at the end of the game. So I think they did right to TCU. TCU had more, quote unquote, top 5 wins. I think they overall did better.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And we now have Sam Sprunger with us, and we were talking about the idea of the College Football Playoff Committee and how they maybe a little bit surprised me, because I didn't believe that they would maybe do the right thing. I thought I thought it was so tempting to have Georgia, Bama, Ohio State, Michigan for these TV ratings, for sponsorship dollars just sitting there. I thought that's how they were going to go, especially when USC and TCU lose. But the committee did put TCU in, who I thought earned their way. Do I think TCU is better than Alabama? I don't. But I think they earned it this season, and I think that should matter. And I don't think that that's necessarily in line with what the committee's done over years. That's where we're at, Sam.
I think they got it right. I agree with you guys. Much like rewarding Cincinnati for what they did last year. This, yep. I mean, honestly, and Tony and I talked about this on Friday, is if you compared schedules, TCU has the better schedule and bigger wins this year than Alabama does. So it would only make sense that Alabama didn't get in. Plus, let's compare. I mean, granted, SEC is considered, and probably rightfully so for the most part, the best college football conference.
Yep.
That doesn't take away from the fact that TCU was still in a Power 5 conference, went undefeated through the regular season, and lost in overtime in the championship game, which, Dalton, I hadn't ever really asked you. Should teams be punished for losing in their championship game when they earned the right to and won to get there? Yeah, should this be a penalty?
That's one of the tricky things too. And I was curious because I don't necessarily believe so, but when you line up the opponent, like it's there. It's not an ideal situation. And this was what, before the Saturday games happened, I was curious. And we'll talk about what actually did happen in this game in the next segment. But the Big Ten championship game, let's say Purdue did beat Michigan. Ohio State's sitting there not playing this weekend in the conference championship game. Would that knock Purdue out and put Ohio State in that hypothetical world where Purdue Michigan beats Michigan? Yeah. Sorry, I can't remember what I said. Okay. So let me say it again. Would it knock Michigan out and put Ohio State in with Ohio State not playing? You both shake your head no. But
the only reason I say that, Dalton, is the head-to-head.
Yeah,
and I'm not saying you're wrong, but then you look at it, and Ohio State's 11-1, only lost to the number 2 team in the country. You look at Michigan, they'd be 12-1, with their loss being to Purdue.
But my contention on that would be, if they didn't have that championship game and you just ended it at the regular season end, it'd be 12-0 and 11-1. There's no, I mean, this is an extra game that even the committee head has said they're bonus games. I asked my son after that was said, I said, if you're taking a test and you have a bonus question and you know you're going to get counted against if you get it wrong, are you going to fill out that bonus question? He said, no. I said that to me is, if it's a bonus and the committee recognizes it as a bonus, you should not be
penalized. But this is still assuming full faith in the committee, and that you're really taking them for the word here, because
or else the win changes as to why they voted people in places.
And USC would be in the top 4 if it truly was bonus.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely.
Well, and that leads me to my next question then. So do you think this is why a lot of these conferences are potentially moving to getting rid of their divisions as a whole? Because then you could basically have your conference championship game at second to last game of the season, and then you don't have to worry about a quote unquote bonus game.
Well, I think a lot of it too is, no offense, Sam, but the Big Ten West having like a Purdue make it to the championship game, or Northwestern. I think the ACC's had that problem with the Coastal Division and Pitt getting in just last year and winning. And they've had some really lopsided championship games. So I think conferences, especially as we're looking for the almighty dollar and the expanded playoff that's coming, it's official in 2024. I think teams are saying, how do we make sure we send our absolute best product? How do we maximize the volume that this 12-team playoff format is? How can we take advantage of that? In conference are saying we put our 2 best teams against each other. One wins, one loses. Hey, it's not a bad loss. You can still sneak them in. Maybe you even have more in the conference. I think that's ultimately.
Are you saying that, like, let's take the Big Ten?
Yep.
That's our show and everything.
No.
So have they officially, because I saw a tweet, I forget who it was, but it was talking about all the things happening in 24. and they were talking about, USC and UCLA joining the Big Ten. The Big Ten getting rid of divisions in 2024, and the new NCAA football video game coming out in 24. So, like, those are
which they delayed a year. I had saved money. I would have bought the dumbest version of that. Like, I would have spent so much stupid money. I've waited a decade. I'm so sad. But go on. I'm still grieving.
Right. I can see that. I mean, if you're watching on video, you can see the pain right now. But if they're let's say the Big Ten is getting rid of, because I thought the last I'd heard that they were sticking with them, they just hadn't realigned them or whatever. But let's say they get rid of them. Are you talking about the championship game actually being an extra championship game at the end of the season after the regular season's done? Is that
what do you mean an extra?
So like the Big Ten championship game this year happened after the regular season. The top two teams, one from each division, went to Indianapolis and play. Is that the way the championship's still going to look?
Well, Tony was shaking his head no. What did you have, Tony?
So I kind of meant like, basically like how they want to do it for the most part of the two best teams face off. Like, honestly, like right now,
that's what I'm saying.
Depending on what it looks like. Like, so say, for example, Ohio State and Michigan, like this year, they didn't play until the very last game of the season, already.
They're not going to make a championship game, the rivalry game, just on happenstance. You're going to have an established championship game. And if that's the case, not every year, but most of the time, you're going to have a repeat back-to-back weeks. Now, Ohio State and Michigan are going to love that because they're playing each other back-to-back weeks. Mm-hmm. How many times is it going to happen that the Big Ten's going to watch this happen and then go, what the hell are we doing?
Well, and I think they're in a weird spot right now, and I'm curious how they kind of handle it because there hasn't been a lot officially said about how the Big Ten moves forward with the 16 teams, divisions, because, I mean, tradition has it, the last Saturday of the regular season at noon, Ohio State and Michigan kick off and they play. Either you're going to break tradition or you're going to run into that exact problem that you're talking about, Sam, where you're playing back-to-back weeks, which isn't really great. That's not great for anybody.
It will eliminate one of the teams more than if they're expanded
with the 12 teams,
it's not as likely, but still, I mean, it's one of those that, and then you're going to watch them potentially play a third time in the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I think it's needing fixed, and I don't know how they handle it. I think that's one they're still working on.
I'm a proponent of those two being in the same division, no matter where you go, even though it kind of lopsides things.
But what if you're wiping out divisions altogether?
Then you're playing with fire of it happening potentially 1 year, let's say 2029, the 3-game series that Michigan and Ohio State played because they were the two best teams in the Big Ten. They played each other in the Big Ten championship, and they played in the Final Four as well.
So you endorse divisions no matter what.
I like divisions in the aspect of you're not beating the same drum of the same laundry is showing up every championship. And you know what? It's all the other teams' responsibility to get there too. Don't get me wrong. But when you kind of say, okay, we're just going to take our top two. Well, granted, USC's in there, and they'll come in occasionally. You'll have the Wisconsin that occasionally, but I would put money on it's going to be Michigan and Ohio State a majority of the years, and that will be when I start getting tired of watching Michigan and Ohio State.
I love the idea now of let's have a 16-team conference with the Big Ten, and instead of 2 divisions, let's make 4.
Why not?
Make 4 divisions, just like the AFC and NFC in the NFL. And you have these 4 divisions. Whoever wins their own little pod, their own division, will have 2 Big Ten semifinal matchups before a Big Ten championship game with the winners. I mean, let's make this nuts.
Well, here's the same thing where you kind of rank them in seeds. Like, okay, say Ohio State's in their own little pod. They're number 1. Let's say Wisconsin is like number 4. And then, number 1 and number 4 face off, number 2 and number 3 face off.
And here's another thing. If you eliminate, let's say, let's go with a random team. Let's say you take Hawaii off of your schedule, or maybe
you're looking at Michigan there,
or Colorado State. Eliminate one of those preseason warm-up games, to fit in that semifinal game to play into the Big Ten championship game. It's not a horrible idea because then you're getting a competitive game for your 12th game.
Yeah.
But what happens to those teams that don't make it into that playoff? Then they've got an 11-game schedule, and
Well,
6-5 does get you into the bowl.
And by the time we get to 2024, we'll have at least 60 bowl games, so everybody gets a prize. So they'll get it. They'll get a bowl
Oprah
game
of
that
bowl
way.
seasons.
Yeah, correct.
Right.
All right, let's go ahead and move to the second quarter.
That's probably my job, isn't it?
I mean, it could be.
All right, we're ready for the second quarter. We pocketed this conversation until Sam was with us because it only feels right. It only feels right. Well, let me tell you something. If Michigan State wins a national championship or a Big Ten title, nobody gets to say anything until I come on. That's going to be the rule moving forward.
So you better make sure you're there the next show because it'll just be me and Tony.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And that's what I expect for 50 minutes until I just show up out of nowhere.
Like a phoenix out of the ruins.
Dalton's like, all right, give me 2 minutes. This is my whole Dalton daily.
That's right. But Big Ten title game, obviously Purdue ends up falling short here. Purdue had a lot of the Big Ten backing them from a lot of the conversations I was having with people. And it was fun for a while, but ultimately Michigan kind of showed why they're one of the best teams in the country this year, and Michigan pulled it away. But the experience, before we talk about the actual game, just the experience as a fan of the Purdue Boilermakers, because, again, these are moments that are kind of few, far, and in between. And by the time that this show comes out later on tonight, we're recording this a little bit earlier, we might be seeing a new era of Purdue football. I mean, there's a lot of rumors and hearsay of Jeff Brom. I mean, again, this might be outdated by the time this show comes out. I have no idea what all is going to happen with Jeff Brom and potentially going to Louisville. But just the experience as a fan, being able to have this moment, even though it was a loss, what was that like?
Well, I spoke about it the other day last week when you were on. This was probably the second biggest game that I anticipated in my lifetime. Now, the Ohio State Purdue game that I saw Purdue win and Drew Brees Sr., that wasn't anticipated. I got those tickets kind of last minute, so I got to go. So it wasn't like I had a buildup. The Rose Bowl. Never seeing Purdue play in the Rose Bowl of all games, and at that time it was still the granddaddy of them all. It was the bowl game if it wasn't the BCS bowl game.
The good old "You're looking live."
Yeah, you're looking live from Pasadena, California. This was the most anticipated game, and you know what? I had no delusions that I wasn't picking Purdue to win. I was sure as hell hoping Purdue was going to win, though. And for the first half, and Tony, we talked about this. If it's going to be close through the first half, if it's close after 3, Michigan needs to watch out. Well, Michigan was able to separate. Yep. And I was a little off on. I thought it would be 2 scores, and then Purdue would get it to 1. It actually was at 2 scores, and Michigan got it to 3. So I mean, it essentially went, Tony, about the way we expected. But I loved the aspect. It is my annual Christmas party. I've talked about that, a few times on here. We had the game on. We had it on mute, which kind of stunk because I couldn't hear. Well, actually, Purdue was probably getting ragged on a little bit, but that's fine. But we had Michigan fans over. Hey, they're good people other than their poor life choices when it comes to that. But like we were able to rib each other back and forth. One Michigan fan said something about the tunnel. I said, "Oh, you're going to get in a tunnel and start a fight and then not take any responsibility for it, huh?" And so she gave me some stuff back. So, I mean, it was done in fun. So it was.
Wait, hang on. What was the retort? Was it about the train dying during the pregame entrance for Purdue earlier this season, where the crew of 30 on-field staff had to push the train off? Like, what is that retort?
She laughed and said, "Yeah, it's kind of true, isn't it?" And walked. She is probably the best case scenario Michigan fan I could have had over at my house, because it was one of those that she knew what was going to happen, but she was willing to take the ribbing back because Purdue hung with them for the first half. So for the first half, I was relentless on her, and then as it started, she piled on once it started expanding out. So, it was fun, and that was what I've been hoping for many, many years, of getting Purdue at least to the championship game. And don't get me wrong, I didn't want to see them lose. I don't want to see them lose ever. And it stinks that they didn't get a Big Ten championship, but it was one of those that we've been seeing this championship game since you were in high school, Dalton, and I was at the same school. Like, that's when it started. And at no point since you were in high school has Purdue been there. And that was what the nice thing was. I was able to see my team be in there, a chance, even if it was a small one.
Well, and I don't know if since I was about 5 years old, if Purdue would have ever been in a Big Ten title game if the game existed back then. Like, I mean, this is.
You would have put divisions. They would have been there in what, 2000 when they went to the Rose Bowl, because they would have won their division. But
that's when I was 5.
Oh, well, yeah. Okay. you did the math. Huh?
So did you, apparently.
Yeah. But, it's funny because Sam mentioned that, it was close for a minute and then Michigan just swung it open. And, Tony, this is what's really kind of damning about the Wolverines all year. This is what they've done. They've just kind of wrestled with the team in the water for a little bit, and then it comes third quarter time, and they just grab them and put them right under. Like they are
the Wolverines
suffocating.
are like gators.
A little bit.
Take you in the water and roll you around and drown you.
Yeah,
little
but no,
roll.
but no, I think this is a team that just beats you up mentally, physically. I think the offensive line is too much for teams to handle, and I don't know what you took away from it.
Yeah, I unfortunately didn't get to watch a whole lot of it because I was at my work's Christmas party getting free adult beverages.
Do they not have TVs in that place?
They did, but it was.
There's just no recollection kind of night.
Oh no, I remember.
Oh, okay.
I had a lot of
that's when it doesn't matter the environment. You ask them, can you turn on the TV and put on the championship?
So much workplace drama. It was beautiful. That was honestly.
You tell everybody to calm down and watch some football. That's what you do.
I know, but no, I mean, I did get to catch a little bit of it, and much to Sam's point, I mean, Purdue really did hang with Michigan for a majority of the game. I mean, up until about literally 9 minutes left, it was 28-19 Michigan. So I mean, within 9 points, so technically 2 scores. But I mean, that
small 2-score.
Yeah, that's a smaller 2-score in. I mean, that's about as good as you can get
because 8 points is one possession.
So I mean, and the thing that I will say for Purdue, for the most part, they took away a lot of those big plays that Michigan was able to do on Ohio State. Like, they only had really one big play drive. It was a 40-yard pass and then a 27-yard run from Donovan Edwards to put Michigan up, the 28-13. So, I mean, Purdue did about as well as you honestly could have expected for them to do, both defensively and offensively. Because, I mean, Aiden O'Connell was no slouch. He threw 366 yards. And
I wasn't listening, obviously, but did I see something that Jones got a Big Ten championship game record for receptions?
He might have. I mean, he got 13 receptions.
I want to say that he did.
Oh, I want to say he did as well. Let me look that up, but I'm pretty positive he did.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's to your point, is Purdue did much of what they were hoping to do. They just couldn't do it on the same scale that they needed to win the game.
Yeah. And I mean, and for them, unfortunately, they only got 1 touchdown, and it was from Mockobee. So I mean, other than that,
and it was a great run. Oh my goodness gracious! He left 2 Wolverines with their jocks around their ankles. Like, it was fun to watch.
So I mean, honestly, like Purdue did everything that really Purdue needed to do. Is just they unfortunately weren't able to finish. Like, that 1 touchdown was their last one, and they just had to kick field goals from that point.
May I ask a question to both of you? And I know, Dalton, you're looking something up, but is it possible that Devin Mockobee gets a scholarship next year?
Oh, he has to, right?
He has to, right? Like, my nephew asked me that at the game, or while we were watching the game. He looks at me and goes, "You think he's getting a scholarship next year?" I said, "I sure hope so, because if not, he might leave."
Yeah.
I mean, no, they need to.
I mean, he ran for almost 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns. And I mean,
and what a story, because he was, like you said, almost 1,000 yards with the worst rushing attack in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Period.
Right.
Like, it was the worst coming. Heck, it was 16th out of 14 teams in the Big Ten. Like, it was that bad of a rushing attack. So I honestly, if he doesn't, I wouldn't damn him if he did leave, but I would hope that by the end of this, whoever is the coach will say, yes, we need you on our team.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I'm curious too, before we hit the halftime break, Sam, does it kind of dampen the mood or experience at all if I remind you that even though Purdue suffers this loss, had they held on against Penn State, had they held on against Syracuse, Purdue's probably in the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, I literally a matter of about 3 plays, maybe 4 if you count there was a personal foul and a passing interference against Penn State that led them down into scoring territory. Not saying they wouldn't have scored, but it would have been a lot harder for them to score if they were 40 yards further back. But then same thing with Syracuse. They had a personal foul, and then they couldn't tackle the quarterback and let him throw a circus pass at the end with 30 seconds or whatever, and scored a touchdown to win it. And so like those 2 games, absolutely. But I was also talking to Tony that if USC had won and Purdue had won, that would have kept Ohio State out of the Rose Bowl, because Purdue would have been the conference champion, not going to the CFP. So they would have gotten a New Year's 6 out of it. But things worked out to where both Michigan and Ohio State get the CFP. Good for them.
Would have been great if Purdue won for so many reasons.
I would have. I don't drink, but I might have had a celebratory pop or two.
Pop or two. What's the go-to pop for an occasion like that?
I don't know, because I don't drink soda either. So I like it. And it's amazing how big I am with not drinking those 2.
What do you
beverages,
consume,
right?
man?
I drink a lot of water.
Tea. Just water, tea.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. Imagine how big I'd be if I drank alcohol and soda. Like, goodness gracious, I'd be.
And you know what's funny, Sam? We're the exact opposite. I mainly drink both adult beverages and pop. And
it's basically your whole BAC, is just, or your whole blood content is just all alcohol and soda.
Yeah. Oh. I used to always drink. I used to always joke that it was tequila and Pepsi. Like,
ooh, gosh,
not
together, right? Not together, right?
No, never together.
No. Grape
no,
soda or grape Kool-Aid and vodka is not good either. So just a heads up.
No.
So real quick before we get over to halftime, I want to lay this in front of both of you. This can be the last one before we get to halftime. We'll start with Tony, but we talked with about Michigan, and kind of circling back to our college football playoff conversation. It's interesting because we're talking about a lot of the time for the beginning of the show, Ohio State and TCU both being in, and we're kind of talking about them with Alabama. Usually it feels like we have 3 really deserving teams in the college football playoff. Like, that's been kind of the consistent theme throughout the time since we've had the college football playoff. This year, I mean, this would have been a year that I think it's okay for the BCS to just have Georgia and Michigan face off. Like, I think we have 2 teams that are playing at such an elite level beyond what the other groups have shown on the field that I don't know. I just think it's Michigan and Georgia at this point. Now, with a month of preparation, maybe one of these other teams flips it around, but it's one of those odd years. We only got 2 really deserving teams instead of 3, Tony.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a lot of that just comes from that Michigan versus Ohio State game where, Michigan piled it on. And again, it was mainly big plays against the defense that they took advantage of. And honestly, there's a few times we saw how prolific this Ohio State offense could be. But now with Jackson Smith and Jigba declaring for the draft, he's not going to be a part of Ohio State's college football playoff run. That kind of hurts him a little bit. Now, to be fair,
does it?
He hasn't really been
played
there,
much, so does it really hurt him?
It can and it can't, because I mean, if he's at least on the field, if he's
they could use him.
They could use him, but it doesn't necessarily hurt him not being, since they've had to basically play all year anyway.
Right,
correct.
But it would help them if he was, just because again, they don't have to play him. He doesn't even have to actually catch the ball. He just has to be there, and that's one other guy or maybe 2 that they have to cover him with just to be safe. and help that offense.
Think about how severe that hamstring injury has to be if it's kept him out an entire season, essentially. Like, he's played some, but like essentially, because is it because he's just so fast and he does so many hard cuts? Like, what is wrong? Like, if it's me and it's taken this long to recover from a hamstring, I'm looking for surgery. Like, it's a whole year basically football season. So it's kind of like, goodness gracious, how severe is this hamstring injury?
Yeah, it's been stunning. I remember when Michigan State and Ohio State played earlier this year, and I remember talking with Ohio State people, and the sense was it was any time now. Like, it's maybe a little bit down the road, but that was like first week of October.
Yeah,
like I mean, it's stunning how this is taking place. But nonetheless, that's a lot of the football talk that we have. We got a little bit of basketball to get to in the second half, right after this of a halftime break.
You are listening to Big 10 Plus 4, hosted on Anchor and StreamYard.
Hey, I'm Pantsless Aaron.
This is Stevie.
And I'm Augie.
And we are BFYTW, a podcast all about playing games and having fun. Our games are usually based on British panel shows and game shows, but we'll play anything that captures our attention and imagination. Why? It's right there in the title.
You'll never guess what the F stands for.
Hey man, it's me, Kevin Smith. Everybody knows at the root of any good relationship, any relationship worth anything, is the only thing that matters between two people. And I'm talking about television. That's right. That's why you should listen to Married with Television, man, which is a podcast by my friends Shannon and Jamie, I call her cat ears, about movies and TV that they have loved for decades, man. You listen at marriedwithtv.com or anywhere you get your podcasts. They are proud members of the Odd Pods Media Network, man. Married with Television.
All right, time for the second half and the third quarter. I don't know if either of you have more football thoughts or topics you want to sprinkle in. We can certainly get to those, but I thought it might be well-suited or appropriate to switch a little bit to basketball as well, because Big Ten basketball, I might have to end up eating a little bit of crow here. Before the year, I said I expect a down year for the Big Ten, which isn't necessarily disrespecting the Big Ten. I thought we just were at an all-time high when it came to Big Ten performance over the last few years, and especially getting teams into the tournament. I thought it was due for a dip, especially when you looked at the rosters coming in. I did not see Maryland coming.
No,
I did not see Purdue coming. I did not see so many of these teams performing at the level that they are, that maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the Big Ten's going to have another strong year in basketball, which really kind of surprises me.
Well, let's pump the brakes just a touch, because we are still at the beginning of December. We're not really kicking it. We just had teams kicking off their conference schedule. So, like, there's still, 19 more conference games to play. Don't they play 20?
Yep.
So that is at least 9 more weeks. I honestly, they're going to beat the crap out of each other left and right once we get into full swing conference play. Now, I think you're absolutely right. We underestimated what we thought the Big Ten was going to be, based on what they did last year, and what the conference lost from last year. Did any of us see Zach Edey putting 30 and 22 on the board?
Oh my gosh!
No.
And I do believe that Ben Johnson said, "I don't know how anybody's going to match up against this guy this year."
Well, and the thing is, like, I don't even know if the idea of coming into the year hearing that Zach Edey would have a game like that necessarily blows me away. The bigger thing that surprises me is that backcourt being as good as they are, and I think we've talked.
Fletcher Lawyer
is
amazing.
I mean, these two freshman guards are not playing like freshmen, and that's not something you could have counted on before the season. They have been unbelievable between Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer, and then you throw in Zach Edey, and you can kind of play around that. I mean, you're right. Ben Johnson's right. You can't match up with Zach Edey. He's 7'4". He moves pretty well for 7'4", and then you just put shooters all around. I mean, it's honestly a bit of like a more barbaric version of how LeBron plays in the NBA in terms of, hey, here's LeBron. Let's just throw, this is what smart franchises do. They
Make
put
him the
shooters
hub.
around LeBron. Yeah, they put shooters around LeBron. The Lakers decided not to do that. I
Instead
don't
of
really know
LeBron's
why.
friends.
Yeah. So, but that's what Purdue's like, hey, what if we just grab an ogre, just a giant, threw him under the basket, and just put lethal snipers all around him?
Well,
And
that's
now
the
we're seeing
kicker.
it work.
Dalton, like
Yeah.
I watch an extended amount of Purdue because, obviously that's my team. So like they will, within 3 seconds of getting past half court, it's into Edey and he's holding it above his head,
Yep.
doing the fake pass. And then all of a sudden a guy opens up on the opposite side of the court and boom, he's got it like a laser beam.
Because if you're not going to double, he's got 6-8 inches on anybody guarding
On
him. And he can
anybody.
take him one-on-one.
Like Drew Timme didn't know what to do with him.
Mhm.
Like he just did not have any. And Drew Timme was he didn't win Player of the Year last year, but he was a finalist, correct?
Yeah, I believe he was All-American
And
first team.
and he is like the gold standard for like a power forward, like a small center, and
Yep.
he couldn't do anything with Zach Edey.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's to me something drastically would have to happen for me not to say, yeah, I think Zach Edey's Player of the Year.
Yeah,
Like, that's
I mean,
how good he's playing right now.
I mean, right now, so we talked about how good Chris Murray is. I mean, for Iowa, Zach Edey right now is even better, at least for the Big Ten. Right now, Zach Edey is top, like number 1 or number 2 in 3 of the Big 6, statistical
Sheesh.
categories in the Big Ten. He's number 1 in points scored per game. He's 23.3. He's number 1 in defense in rebounds with 12.8 a game. And then he's second to blocks with 2, only behind Hunter Dickinson. And
Tony,
keep in
did
mind,
you see he out rebounded Minnesota?
yeah,
The whole team, he out rebounded them.
The whole
other night.
state. Make it
Yeah.
bigger.
Yeah,
The-
like-
the whole state got rebounded.
but that is unheard of. Like
Yep.
that is, and I love that it's Purdue that this guy plays for. But like that is complete dominant. Kofi Coburn was dominant at his position the last 2 years. He was nothing compared to what Zach Edey's doing right now.
Yeah. Edey is. Oh, go ahead, Tony.
Sorry, and keep in mind, because I just noticed this as well, there's only 2 other players that are also in the top 5 of each of those statistical categories as well. So Zach Edey leads all of them. Hunter Dickinson is the second, and then Trace Jackson Davis is the third. So 3 Big Ten players, obviously in the Big Ten, all leading top 5 for the statistical category. So I mean, that's 3 big time players that the Big Ten has.
I think maybe we just underestimated what the Big Ten was going to be. Now they're not. I don't know. I still don't think they're going to be talent wise what they were last year. I mean,
Agreed.
that's a ton of talent that went away,
Mhm.
especially in the first round.
Yep.
But I think maybe we underestimated what the Big Ten conference was going to be and what kind of talent there was going to be. And I told you Kevin Willard is a good coach.
Well, and that's the thing, though, Sam, is Kevin Willard can be a good coach, but
Sure.
to be nearly undefeated until last night, losing at Madison, Wisconsin, like those 2 things don't need to be 2 in the same. It's
No, I get you.
unbelievable that he arrived in College Park, and it was interesting. I was talking with Rayfield Davis a little bit, like what's going on with Maryland, because I mean, Dante Scott, the Hakeem Hart, we've heard of some of these Terps before, but Julian Reese, but how are they this good? Like they're number 13 in the country. And he said, like without a second of hesitation, trust. That team bought into Kevin Willard as soon as he landed in College Park. And you're seeing it pay off. Dante Scott lost 25 pounds before this season in preparation because Kevin Willard said, what would it look like if you lost 25 pounds and were playing basketball? He trusted it, lost 25 pounds, and look at him now. I mean, it's amazing. And then between all of those things going on, Wisconsin knocks him off, undefeated last night. Wisconsin, I don't get how Wisconsin every single year just beats everybody to death, grinds them out, and just comes away with wins. I mean, it's not a roster that should be winning the Big Ten, but it wins the Big Ten.
Coach guard be coach guard. That's what
it is. I mean, and it's the Wisconsin style. I mean, that as many people think it might be a boring style of play, they do it. That's the difference. It's not just a style of play. Wisconsin, year in, year out, consistently executes exactly what they're wanting to do at such a high level. I don't love the style of play, but if you execute anything as well as Wisconsin executes that style of play, you're setting yourself up in a good chance.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't have an actual
Don't throw up in your mouth a little bit there, Tony. Talking about
I know
Wisconsin.
I don't have a good professional opinion as to why Wisconsin is able to do what they're able to do. I'm just going to say blood magic, and that's what I'm going to chalk it up to. Like every night, I don't know what he does, but they do something.
I tell you what, it started with Dick Bennett. Wisconsin started it right there. Getting Dick Bennett to come from Wisconsin Green Bay to come to Madison, that was the start of what Wisconsin is now. And I can remember growing up that Wisconsin was a dumpster fire. I can remember when they made the tournament for the first time since 1941, when they actually won.
Bud Foster brought him the title.
Won the national title. Their next time was in the 90s. Then after that, they went a really long time without making it to the tournament. And the crazy thing is they're like, I remember watching the first round game. This is Wisconsin, or Wisconsin historically is undefeated in the tournament because it was their second time in the tournament ever. Now, my point is it started with Dick Bennett, and they've just replaced him. When he retired, Bo, what was
Ryan?
Ryan, thank you. And then guard. They just have done good hires that stay in what they are traditionally known for. And it's frustrating as all get out, because when you play against them, you don't know what, it's a thing. If you're down by 10 against Wisconsin, it's like you're down by 25.
Well,
because
and
they just slow it down.
And as Rayfield Davis was saying, because we talked a little bit about Wisconsin also, he said, you can't win playing your game against Wisconsin.
No.
You are forced to play Wisconsin's game, and you got to win at their game. Which is just the ultimate compliment to that program and how they're able to execute. Okay, we'll be talking a lot more about Big Ten basketball as we move forward, because we're getting into full swing of things. Real quick, let's pause now and go to the fourth quarter. All right, we got just a couple minutes here, and what I want to do is tonight there's a couple more games still going on for Big Ten basketball. Number 4, Purdue does have a non-conference game, so not necessarily the most exciting for on the floor, but it is. Hofstra comes to town, but it is Caleb's first movie poster night. I don't know if you've seen this on social media, but he's been dressing as Buddy the Elf. Playing the Will Ferrell character. Check out Purdue's social medias, because he has been killing it.
And so you're doing some of the scenes from it, around campus type thing.
Yeah. So
that
he and Matt
amazing.
Painter, him and Matt Painter are at a desk, and the phone rings, and Caleb grabs over the phone.
Coach Painter's office. What's your favorite color?
Purdue basketball. What's your favorite color? Yes. So check it out, because it's terrific.
I love that players and programs will do that, in the aspect of they don't let it run what their ultimate goal is. They have a goal, but yet they know that it can get too serious, and it can go very badly wrong and go south. Check out Michigan. Last year, I think it was, when they started, and at number 4 and went to shouldn't have been in the tournament, in my opinion. But anyways, taking those times to have fun, and I love that. Purdue basketball.
Check it out. It's terrific.
Color.
He finds one of those carousel doors, and he's running around in it, and then throws up outside. I mean, it's good stuff.
The funny thing is he kind of resembles. Now, he doesn't look like Will Ferrell, but he resembles Buddy.
When he's wearing the costume, he pulls it off pretty well. He really does. I thought the same. I was like, boy, if he was a little bit bigger and more curly haired, he'd be Will Ferrell. So yeah, check that out. But besides that, number 14, Indiana hosts Nebraska.
Watch
guys,
out for the Cornhuskers.
Yeah, as we talk about surprises in the Big Ten, Nebraska knocking off number 7 Creighton.
Yeah. I didn't see that coming.
Indiana knocked off UNC.
Yeah, well, and that's another story. North Carolina, and North Carolina's another story. I mean, that was preseason number 1. They're now unranked. We're talking about maybe them missing the tourney at this point.
It wasn't like they were number 1. It was number 1, and we think they could make a run at what 76 IU did.
Well, it made sense. They brought back
Sure
Leaky
did.
Black. They brought back Armando Bacot. I mean, they got a squad in Chapel Hill, and things are not good right there.
Is it just like the chemistry? Are multiple people having down year? Like, there's got to be something that we're not seeing, because, like you said, it's essentially the same team. They added Nance because I forget the redheaded guy from the team last year. That
Redheaded guy.
Yeah, the Manic I don't know.
Oh, yes.
You know what I'm
Manic
talking
was
about.
correct. Yes.
He's gone, but Nance is in. So, like, other than that, like, that's about all that happened. Like, what's the difference this year?
Yeah. No, I mean, just from a far away observer, it's all I could tell you is they are not playing to their talent, which is the very basic observation. But,
That's
like, I have no more
understatement, I think.
insight. You know what I mean, though? Like, you watch it and you're like, wow,
sure.
this is not what these guys
This is not
are.
the same team that knocked Coach K out of his last tournament. Like,
Yeah.
it just didn't. It doesn't. It looks like they could lose to a JV team at some points.
Mm-hmm.
And also tonight,
Go Rutgers.
in Happy Valley, Penn State hosts Michigan State. This one's interesting. This one tips at 6:30. If you're into the spreads, Penn State's favored by 4 points. They're at home.
Oh,
I mean, Sam, you make a face, but given Michigan State's injuries and the way that they've played the last two games, and given how, I mean, Penn State and Notre Dame might be the two oldest basketball teams in America today. Penn State has like a 7th-year senior. They got a bunch of 5-year seniors. They shoot the lights out of the ball. I mean, this is one of the best might be the best three-point shooting team that exists in the Big Ten. Like, it's up there. It could challenge Purdue and some of the others. I think that's a tough one for Michigan State tonight.
I make the face because it's not normal to hear that in basketball, Penn State is favored over Michigan State. That's why I made that face.
Yeah, which is fair.
But, you know, even though they had the injuries, it still catches you even more off guard, just for the fact that, the way that Michigan State played against Gonzaga. You know, they played them well. They beat Villanova. I know Villanova's fell out of the top 25, but it's still just I've been paying attention to record. I've been box score watching for Penn State, so I don't know a ton of. I haven't watched a lot of them, so I don't know. That's another reason I didn't realize they had 45-year-old gentlemen that
it's the same. Yeah, it's the same guys as Jalen Pickett, Seth Lundy, Miles Dredd. I mean, they've been there forever since the Pat Chambers days, and they're still there in State College. I think Micah Shrewsbury's done a terrific job there at Penn State early too. That's correct. But in talking about Michigan State, look, there's plenty of reasons, and we don't have enough time to dissect them all. But one, the team is tired. I mean, they are exhausted. They flew out to San Diego, played on an aircraft against Gonzaga. They come back, they're playing in Indy against Kentucky, go out to Portland, play in the Field Night Invitational, rolling into the arena parking lot at like 7:30 or 8 in the morning, Monday morning, from that trip to Portland. And 24 hours later, hopping on a bus and going to South Bend, playing there, then playing this last game. I mean, against Northwestern to start the Big Ten year. Like, they are tired. And the thing is, with those two injuries, you knew coming into it, with Izzo deciding not to go to the transfer portal and add more bodies, decided, you know what, this is our group, we're rolling with them. And they don't have the depth with these two injuries to be able to sustain this and play the way they want to. I mean, they're just beat down at this point.
I haven't seen, are they extended period of time injuries, or is it one of those they're just riding it out and they will be back?
So Malik Hall's extended. He's probably due around Christmas, New Year's. For Michigan State. Jaden Akins has been battling an injury. He's been out for a little bit. He tried coming back last game, came up grimacing a couple of times, so we'll kind of see. But yeah, Michigan State needs to try getting out of Happy Valley with a win and then resting those two guys, finishing up non-conference before the Big Ten really goes full gas.
Well, the reason why I asked is because, you know, we all know that, for one thing, when losing games for Tom Izzo is not the issue. It's the getting the work in, and you know what? He knows he's got a small roster. Maybe it's not a bad thing in his mind that they're doing all this running around to tire them out, to get them ready down. Get the time to rest up, but then still once you get into the swing of conference, get enough wins to get into the tournament, and then it's anybody's bet.
Well, in his words, he's kind of said, look, I don't necessarily regret like the level of competition we've played during this non-conference, but the days that we've sandwiched these games in, we haven't allowed ourselves any practice time. We haven't allowed ourselves time to rest. He goes, that's what I regret. I regret what I did in terms of just shoving the games together.
But in all, it might turn out okay still. It's just a matter of them finally getting their rest and then getting their practice to make some changes. And by the time, and yet they've still got that experience of playing those high profile teams or, those games in those situations to where all in all, at the end of the day, at the end of the season, as long as they're in the tournament, they're going to be more battle worn and ready to roll.
Well, but this is also something too, Sam. This is the period of time where teams normally kind of finish their molding before going through conference play. And without Malik Hall and Jaden Akins being out there, I mean, it kind of hurts to not have them even for practice. Well, Akins you might have, but Hall, so it's interesting. It's definitely something to keep an eye on as we get ready to close out. So I will let people know on the women's side, we won't break these games down, but just to let you know what's happening tonight, the Cy-Hawk rivalry takes Big Ten women's basketball action.
That's a
number
big
16
matchup,
Iowa
too.
will host number 10 Iowa State. It really is. I've seen Iowa State women's basketball in person this year. Whoa. Ashley Jones is somebody to watch tonight. She averaging, well, at least a couple weeks ago, she was averaging 27 a game. And she'll be going against Caitlin Clark, who, of course, everybody knows on the Iowa side. Minnesota hosts Kentucky at 8 o'clock tonight. Wisconsin and Nebraska will tip at 8, and Rutgers and Illinois women's basketball tip at 8 as well. So a lot of good games in Big Ten coming up tonight. All right, as we get ready to say goodbye, Sam, Tony, go ahead, take the baton and hand us out and let everybody know where they can find us on social media.
All right, Tony, I'll take the first one. You take the second one, and then we'll just kind of riff after that. So you go to the TikToks, the Twitter, and the Instagram, and that is at Big Ten Plus 4. You spell out the plus, Tony. I know it's difficult. Dalton, I know it's hard. You want to just put the plus in, you got to spell out plus with the number 4. So Big Ten Plus 4 there. Tony?
I know, but that's the best part about Facebook is you don't have to do that. You don't have to have an education to use Facebook, and you don't have to have an education to spell. You can put in the plus, you can spell it out. Dealer's choice. It's the best part about Facebook.
Then go to oddpodsmedia.com for any of our past shows, along with the other family of shows there at Odd Pods Media. Tony?
And then you can also catch us twice a week on ASAP Network on Wednesdays and Fridays. That's right. We're so good. We're giving it to you twice.
And if you miss our live streams, you can catch us on Spotify and watch our beautiful faces as we converse about Big Ten stuff.
It's like this was rehearsed. Nice job.
Never once. I
Not at all.
literally just said, Tony, that's what we're doing. We're that good, kids.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. All right. For Sam Sprunger, Tony Hollinsworth, my name's Dalton Shetler. Thank you all for tuning in and joining us for another edition of Big Ten Plus 4. And until next time, we'll see you soon.
See ya.
Bye.